each different bubble of reality is true.
A galactic historian is a person that looks at all the lines of dramatic karma.
Nudge, nudge. It's the Holy Grail.
Improvise. Mysterious.
It's counter psychic intelligence.
Why is DNA farming of this star cluster so important?
Because we do manifest our reality. We do create our reality.
So I'm excited about the topic of this show, the future of our humanity. I mean, what better topic? I mean, every other topic we talk about just brings us to the answer of this specific topic. And we probably should have chosen a 3-hour time slot on this show. But here we have 90 minutes. So what is it that okay, two things. First of all, I want to ask you a question. The question I said that I was going to ask you beforehand, that I was going to surprise you with, is, my wife's a clairvoyant, and, we hang out with a lot of clairvoyants, and so to be specifically tapped into the Akashic Records, I don't know what that looks like exactly. Does that look like you can give time frames and exact predictions? Like if I were to ask you, who's going to be the president? Is it going to be Hillary? Is it going to be Trump? Are they both going to get arrested and it's going to be someone else? Are they going to get nominated and then impeached? Like, do you have that specific information? Because I know when we were doing our session, you had very, very specific information, but on a global scale. And I know the answer is, there are many different timelines that we could choose. But what does this look like when you're reading the Akashic Records?
Okay. So the way our system of shared reality rules works is everyone has a belief that has a placebo around it, that has past lives attached to it, that give us the foundation of the way our shared reality rules works. Our 7 previous generations, we stand upon their shoulders, each generation, living in the now with the technology and the spirituality we've created, in the co-creation with whatever dogmas or scientific beliefs that lead us into creation, co-creation, inspiration, or some new form found of science, or the static form that we're experiencing in now. 10 years ago, the system itself, the esoteric side that runs the world, was trying to create 5 or 10 years of your future based off of its prediction models that it had off of your taxes, your life force, and all of the other esoteric things that it would use to predict you. And nowadays, it can barely do 15 days ahead of time.
Amazing.
For the majority of the people. In some scenarios, it can go 90 days. So to answer your question, it is a shell game right now, or a card game of 3-card monte. Where is the peanut going to be under the card? Mm-hmm. For what I have been saying now for going on 3 years, that each election will be like a Three Stooges event, where the system itself will be showing you its own slapstick from behind its own stage. And Trump is an explanation of that. 3 years ago, I began to give what I call media predictions, something anyone that looks at the media can do. You don't need to be an Akashic record to realize that everything in the media is a sequel. Everything is about keeping the status and static quo. From that point forward, observing the Akashic record isn't observing about the wholeness of our world. It's how the individuals change their own bubble of reality. So as we go closer and closer to the election, you will have those that will be giving their tacit consent for 4 more years of reality control. And then you'll have those others that make a different choice, who choose to see the duality of the world they're living in, that the power of their vote truly means nothing at this point. And they will go into the power of their consciousness, and they will make what I call a separation of densities. So the world, for those that are ready to give away their power, will continue. And for those that are ready to see the power of spirit, the power of science combined with it, so logic creates order, and from order creates clarity, we'll discover consciousness as the next level of scientific and spiritual interaction that leads us away from a system that only wants static reality. So the bigger answer to your question is, it isn't about a global view. That has actually been part of this global infrastructure of distraction to keep everyone entangled in the 24-hour news sources at a bombing in Bali or a rape in India that have nothing to do with the living life in Iowa or Mexico City. There are no filters to information. Information is still heavily weaponized in our world, and it will be the conscious geniuses of this world, both of science and spirit, who come together in their own forms of factions and begin to challenge the commonality of the tongue and say, who will we go to create the 27th letter? Because right now there is no governing body to add a letter to the English language. It'll be the consciousness explorers who separate into communities such as Ben is building, so that spirit and science, or whatever other expression, is freely allowed to be a part of it without the dogmas of finance defining where science will go or what theories are created. The future of our people rests in the individual, who take up the mantle of responsibility that our world is a shared reality rules, that physics will ultimately change. In the 1400s, you had Galileo, so on and so forth, each time rediscovering a different form of science until they discovered the changing of how the speed of light works. They discovered that light doesn't need really a medium to propagate. Well, we can take some of those terminologies and apply it to our own consciousness. And then we look at the system of media. Whose consciousness is creating that media? Is that a free-thinking media? Is that a controlled media? There is the undiscovered country of freedom. There is where whoever is elected will create a polarity and charge so great in the people that there'll become a full separation of densities. Those that choose to create thought constructs in their mind and do something with it that create invaluable sources of information to this world, like we've done in thousands of generations past, spawn the geniuses of different eras who have changed the very thinking of our people. This election, to me, represents that separation of densities where the control system has gone so awry and allowed such bombastic personalities to define the way the system works, reality works, that individuals will then be motivated enough to get up and march in the same scale and size of the 1960s and 70s, but they won't be beating the drums of anti-war. They will be beating the drums in rhythm with the earth, in rhythm with the science that's saying there is something new out there to discover, and the dogmas of the old, both spirit and science, can be set aside to those non-believers or those static believers, and a new consciousness movement comes together. That's what I see for the future of our people.
I love it. I love it. And this is one thing that I've been actively creating, and in my reality is that no matter who gets elected, no matter who it is, whether it's Trump or Hillary or Godzilla, no matter who gets elected, it's not going to be another year of heavy density of the static quo, right? It's going to be, no matter what happens, something good will come out of it, whether it's the people waking up faster, right? If they don't want to wake up the easy way and create something beforehand, they could wake up the hard way and create something after. But us living here in Costa Rica has created a life of lightness, right? So we're out of the density so that we can better create a world of lightness for everyone else in our dream, right? So I love this.
So here's another layer. So when it comes to the presidential election, you asked for something to look, what does the Akashic Records show? It actually shows what I call a bifurcation.
Great.
That means that election creates a wave of energy in the seen and the unseen spectrum of belief, okay? And then in the actual scientific spectrum where our belief begins to manifest stuff. So the actual election is a card game. But I will say no president has ever been elected. Every president has been selected by the governing body of our world.
Right.
This election will show the governing body of our world of unelected oligarchs.
Yes.
That is the most important thing to understand.
By bifurcation, you're referring to the bifurcation point of thermonuclear dynamics, which is chaos has entered into the system, and
Correct.
the cell has one of two ways it can go. The cell can either evolve, either push through the chaos and learn from it and evolve, or reject the chaos and stay the same.
Correct. And in a shared realities environment, that means those that reject the change become encapsulated it. And this is where I say the dream world is that next undiscovered country where we will be able to create thought constructs in our regular meditative moments and then fall asleep and learn lucid dreaming techniques to advance those thought constructs and then awaken from them and learn to download them into our cellular memory, which is our common idyllic memory, so that common geniuses become common everywhere we are. Just
That's
as
amazing.
we learn mnemonics to store and encode data, we are beings of encoded light. And each time we come into a physical body, we are a non-localized soul who becomes manifest for a localized moment, empowering a DNA skin suit to have consciousness in it that only perceives this reality in light and memory.
Okay. But you said that the air cities don't exist
Now,
now.
they're banned from being in the North Pole.
Okay.
Part of when Atlantis began to rise, fall, three rise, three falls.
Wow.
Well, it's the same pattern as Lemuria.
Right.
Because you went through another dense part of space, light part of space, dense part of space,
Right.
light part of space.
Right.
As Atlantis reached its peak, its consciousness of its world was really about stopping these wars of invasion.
Mhm.
You had all you can stand, you can't stand anymore, you're eating their spinach, and they're going to go out and kick butt and take names. And that's what they did on their first rise. Well, what happens when you kick butt and take names 1,000 years later? You get some mad people coming back.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just brought a mass migration of attackers back at them.
Right. Right.
Okay, this puts Atlantis in a tough situation. It had a mass investment of people from Lemuria, and then a mass migration to there because the Lemurian people that were outside of time completed soul codes to other migration groups that had been missing for millions of years. So all of a sudden they're back in this matrix, and a whole big flock of people migrate here. That big flock of people, what we call refugees, worlds that were destroyed by domination and control or used up and said, we don't need this anymore, we're going to go on to the next one. Refugees came here. These refugees were in the worst healing states. They needed healers. The Lemurians interbred with the Atlanteans to create healers. The Arcturians and the Orions and the Pleiadians came here to be healers because they needed billions of healers.
Wow.
They didn't need tens of thousands, they needed billions.
Oof.
Okay, and this is what brought the galactic commerce of healers being shared among worlds.
Oh.
So that peak of Atlantis.
Well, we're in a time where remedy and resolve and resolution is the process, not a justice and judgment. Since the very first day I've come out, I've talked about separation of densities. And these storms are the collective and the uncollective at the tug-of-war of awareness, how our global narrative is actually affected. So there has been variety of things that have gone on since 2012 to now that everyone thought it was going to happen tomorrow and nothing happened. The only thing that has any sway over the global narratives are great natural disasters and hurricanes. Earthquakes and hurricanes and volcanoes. Those are the only things that have any control over the global narrative. And it is my point of view that these set of hurricanes are here to alter the unseen side of the global narrative. They're going to resolve great parts of the karmic debt that's been created by ancient lineages and passed down to the future lineages who have no idea or hope of being able to reduce or let this go because they no longer have the esoteric science, basic knowledge, or knowingness of how to convert or alchemize these projected energies that are stored in our systems. And we have our last caller of the night here, Katie. And where are you calling from?
Hi, Andrew. I'm actually calling from Kathmandu in Nepal.
Kathmandu in Nepal. What has brought you there?
Yeah. What's that?
What has brought you to Kathmandu?
Yeah, I'm actually a humanitarian, and I'm here doing earthquake relief work.
Very cool. Thank you. So what kind of questions do you want to start with?
Yeah, gosh, I have so many, but we'll go down the list. So I'm in Nepal here, and so this is a question for Nepal. We're still getting aftershocks from the earthquake. I think about 366 and counting. Mm-hmm. And I really feel that the issues here are multidimensional. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do energetically to heal Nepal. I'm under weekly psychic attack here, and I just don't know what's going on.
Well, first thing you have to know is you cannot heal a nation by yourself.
Yeah.
The second thing you have to understand is the earth is shaking, reminding the people there that there's tremendous ancestral karma that has not been dealt with in that area. There are great and powerful spiritual leaders and elders there that have been asked by the Earth Mother during these great disasters to come together and work together. That exists there. But you also have to understand there's a part of this world that never wanted Kathmandu to be a spiritual center or a mecca of light cities. And there's a very high percentage chance that you guys are going to be seeing cities of light appear over some of the disaster areas if ceremonials and rituals can begin to release the dead that are great much underneath there. And I want to tell you, as a person that's been around spirit and been around lots of situations where there was mass death out there, you're not going to last long there. You are going to need to bring yourself home and recenter yourself so that you can do the work from afar. You know the signature frequency of the place. You can do far greater work as a grid worker than an on-the-ground, boots on the ground, healing the broken arms and broken legs, bringing the food to the starving people. You will do far greater work by finding a sacred place in your original home and creating a prayer space where hundreds of other people can come together and send prayers there. Because you have the signature frequency of what it is to be on the ground, you can create great waves of energy of people from all over the world to become aware of the fact that there are all these aftershocks there. The vast majority of the people in the world have no idea that Kathmandu is even in a severe situation other than what the propaganda news told them 4 months ago. Okay?
Yeah.
It is on the borderline of absolute disgust that the rest of the world has not sent anything to recover Kathmandu. It is as bad as the Haiti earthquake, where the world looked the other way as 500,000 people starved and were given dysentery.
Yeah, and I feel like at least once a week I'm under psychic attack.
You absolutely
it puts me
are.
like in a real low vibration.
Oh, absolutely are, because you got to realize something. When all those people died, all of those demons lost their feeding ground.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have very desperate, old, ancient, negative spirits that are so desperate that they will jump into someone else that isn't their signature frequency to feed on.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Yeah, do you have, so you think just going back to my home will actually be greater good?
How long have you been there?
I've been here 5 weeks, and I plan to be here a month longer.
I don't think you're going to last a month longer. I'm going to be blunt here. You've got a half a dozen entities that are around you that I've put up a light around you to say, no, you cannot do this. This is a public broadcast. They wanted to use you as a sounding board to get them out of their own situation. Okay?
Yeah.
So literally something would have taken over your voice and would have asked questions that really had nothing to do with you but to them themselves. And from the I am being that is now, finish your process there and know when you're ready to go You just go home and know that you did the absolute right thing. You were there. No one can say you didn't do your tour of duty. You did.
Right.
Okay? When you get back and regenerized and recharged and regrounded to your home is where you know that you can do greater good from there than you can do on the ground, because there's not the material support to give the vision that you have in your heart its blossoming moment. The world is not coming together to help Kathmandu, just like it did not come together to help Haiti. And this is where you can raise the stink on the social media networks. This is where you can use the power of the world to your advantage and charge at that cognitive dissonance of the people who would let the people of Nepal starve.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good advice. And then I was just wondering, my role as a light worker, my origins, I feel a bit lost sometimes. Like, I know I came here, to help raise the vibration of the planet, but I'm just, I just feel real lost sometimes, and, moments of clarity, and then, the next moment, moments of loneliness and depression, and it's just that I'm very imbalanced.
Okay. So I got a question for you. What did you do before Nepal?
I've always done humanitarian work in developing countries, traveling around.
Like where else have you been?
I've been to 27 countries. So Africa, Bolivia, Vietnam, mostly doing humanitarian work in those areas.
Well, you're saying your soul's purpose right there. To go place to place to place to do humanitarian work as the physical I am love being that you are. How many people have you come to love because of the journeys you've taken as a humanitarian that you would have never met if you didn't make the choice?
Yeah, oh gosh, hundreds. Hundreds,
Okay.
Definitely.
Each and every one of those need to be cataloged in your soul so you can begin to write your memoirs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? You want to know about your soul and where you came from. Every place that you went and visit as a humanitarian, you lived there in a time before. You were ancestry related to every single place that you've been. Now you have to take that on a bigger scale and say, now what do I do? I've been to these places, and I know there's an infinite amount more of ancestors out there. What is it I can do to help the whole world simultaneously? And that has been your soul's mission from the moment it came into the fetus. You were here to help the world, not just as a humanitarian, but as the I am being moment now that always is expressing love and knows innately that any other beings that are expressing love, you can co-create with on a grand and divine scale.
Yeah. And do you think those imbalances, the moments of the low vibrations, is that psychic attack, or is that something else, or just
that is a part of your soul that is tired of the journey?
Yeah.
I'm going to be blunt again. Your journey is over. A new journey will begin, but this journey that you started out with so long ago to be the traveling humanitarian has come to an end. You've done your 20 years of service. It's time that you write your memoirs and tell the 7 future generations they need to be out there and be humanitarians. They need to be the boots on the ground and see the blood and all those other things that come with doing what you're doing, the starving children, being able to get that memory out of your mind but still love yourself, knowing that there's millions of people out there that are starving every night. To not let it overweigh you, to teach how that you did it, how you got through that moment, heart-space love, when people were in the most horrible conditions, and that you came home to your home life and reconnected to civilization, first world civilization, and know that you want every civilization to be a first world civilization.
Yeah, I resonate with that because I'm also a certified teacher, and I've been going back and forth between the classroom and then being out in the field, and where can I have the most impact? So
your biggest impact is going to be you giving the same humanitarian aid you've given anyone else directly to yourself for the next couple months. When you finish your tour of duty there, your sole focus is I'm going to do a tour of duty of the self.
yeah,
You're going to clear up all of those old things. You're going to put to pen and paper, ink and digital document what you've done these last years. It's absolutely vital that you do this, because what's coming for you when you're done is going to change you so much. You're going to realize how many contacts you have around the world and how much stink you can raise about a situation that's being ignored in the world. You're going to discover that there are thousands of other heart-based beings out there under one Facebook post will begin to donate their time, effort, and energy to begin to spread the world of whatever humanitarian cause comes by your moment. Nurturing and guiding those future people who may want to become a humanitarian, guiding them, meeting them online or some format where you can show your experience.
Yeah, so like a how-to.
Yeah, like a how-to, like so the children that are in the cell phone age know that they need to be humanitarians too.
Yeah. So, yeah, do you think it's more like I should write a book about it, or it's more like just from a social media journalistic aspect?
Kathy, you want to add in there?
I would say both. I mean, I totally agree with what Andrew says. I mean, what you've been through and what you've experienced needs to be shared with others, not only so that they can learn and have their eyes open, but definitely another part of it is how to, if people are interested in this type of thing and they're young and they don't know anything, what do they do? Who do they contact? If they go to somewhere like Kathmandu, what should they pack? What are the pitfalls? What are the things that they should avoid? What are the things that they should bring, etc.? It sounds all very basic to someone like you who's done it, you know, more than multiple times. But to the novice, they have no idea, you know, absolutely no idea.
Yeah.
And, you know, you have to think of everyone as naive, because we have no concept at all of what you've been through. So not only are people interested in what you have to say, but how did you do it? And how can they duplicate it in a modern day world?
And how they can duplicate it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
You're a veteran. Like, how can they learn from you? They, you know, they obviously can't call you every day and ask you what to do. So where can they go for that information and get the, you know, the scoop on what should I do and which are the organizations that are dodgy and which ones are kosher, and what are the, you know, the pitfalls that they'll fall into and the scams to avoid. And so that's your basic practical side of it. And the other part of it is that a lot of people in the world really have no idea what's going on. They might see it in the news 1 or 2 days, if they happen to catch it on telly or in the newspaper, and they kind of know it is happening, but they really have no concept. They don't know what it is to live their day-to-day. What is it like to not have clean water? I mean, if you can't have access to clean water, how do they filter water, or do they just drink dirty water? I mean, these are all questions that people in the modern day world or modern civilization, first world countries, we just can't conceptualize.
Right. Huh. Okay. I have some ideas. This is really good for me. Thank you.
You're the grizzled veteran in the story.
Yeah. The guru.
I totally am.
Okay.
I totally am. Like I feel so run down so much, and then just so uncertain about what to do in the future. So.
Well, of course, kids have spent so much time giving and nurturing and caring for others that now that you're taking the time to pause and think about it, it's like, you know, you're in the middle of the hurricane.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And yeah, and I guess, you know, and how is this all, like my life's mission now in this incarnation, how is this all related to, my past life origins, maybe from different dimensions or different areas.
Okay.
I guess I was,
Let me just tune into you a
Sorry,
second.
go on.
What year were you born?
1982.
Just a second here. As earlier I was saying, you've lived in every place that you've been a humanitarian at, but you've had regular lifetimes that are part of the reincarnation repetitive grid. There was a scenario where ancestral family debt was given to you, where you grew up owning slaves in South Africa in the mid 1800s, and that was very, very detrimental to your soul's overall health, and it forced you to divest and to be dozens of different soul shards so that you can go and heal the slaves of that Dreamtime life. And when you ended up having your life review, it was very skewed, and it ended up putting you in the reincarnation grid, which then made you the slave to somebody else. So is this repetitive pattern, victim, tyrant, victim, tyrant, victim, tyrant, until the 1960s. Right about there is where you broke your victim, tyrant, reincarnation grid and were able to reassemble your soul shards that were still in the incarnation grid, that weren't going through victim, tyrant. They were going through shaman, healer, time traveler scenario. And when you began to have your last life review in 1955, your ultimate goal was to come in as a crystal or indigo or rainbow child, so that you can create a specific frequency that helped you teach human beings at a much greater scale to no longer be the victim tyrant at whatever scale of existence they're in, as well as the global system being the victim and the tyrant all the time. So you have lots of lifetimes where you go into a scenario and you end up doing something bad, and then something else is done bad to you, and then something else is done bad to you, and then you start doing bad to yourself and find yourself into a zealot's relationship, find yourself having to vest yourself once again into more soul shards until you have a life review where you regain them all over and over again. You have lots and lots of lifetimes in the Roman Empire where you were a soldier that died on the field, reborn into a body inside Rome, a few hours after your death with no life review, and by the time you were 9, you were holding a spear again.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense.
You've learned all those lifetimes that you don't want to do it again. You've also learned that if you are not a mover and shaker at a bigger scale in the world, your soul's not meant to be here. You're not meant to be working at the little level of a mom and pop donut shop ever again. You're meant to be functioning at the bigger scale of the world. And know that. You are meant to be working at a much bigger scale than you are even at right now. I would even go as far as to say as you could take yourself up to the world stage of working with the United Nations if you put out your amalgamation of what your life story is into the actual manifest eminent of who you are, in a document that begins to help people change the world.
Yeah.
You are a great orator. You are a great orator, not just to children as a teacher, but to many adults out there who no longer read or write, but can still read and write. But it is your oration skill that can drive them into inspiration to once again pick up a book and learn, or to put their thoughts onto paper. You are a very inspiring soul and can leave a very distinct, eminent pattern in people if you should choose to emanate the great teacher inside you, who is the divine feminine, giving love to all, who chose to be eminent now, divine masculine, divine feminine, into the incarnate now, who's the humanitarian who's in Nepal right now.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's really what I need to hear right now.
So any other last questions you'd like to have?
No, I think that's pretty much covered it. I really appreciate your insights today.
You're welcome. I have one question for you. How did you find out about me?
Oh, I'm friends with the Melbourne crew, and they pointed me in your direction. They said you know who they are.
Yeah, I know who they are.
I'm involved in that circle and the shaman circle down there, and and I was just asking so many questions about, I just wanted to know, the history and just the real truth of it all. And they said, okay, you need to follow Andrew Bartzis, and they're like, listen to his 20-part series, don't come back to us until you're finished. and it took me 2 full months to get through it, and then I went back to them.
Very cool. Very cool. I love asking that question because it reveals so much to me of how important those 20 parts were. Thank you.
Yes, I love it, and I continue to be a big fan and follower. So thank you for your inspiration.
Thank you very much, and you have a good day, and just know your tour of duty in Nepal is done. Okay?
Thank you so much, Andrew.
All right, sister, you take it easy. Have a really good day.
Okay, take care. Bye.
Wow, Kathy, another amazing caller.
I know. Just wow. The energy around that is just wow.
Yeah, wow, exactly. I'm wowing myself there.
Oh, but wow. What an experience she must be having.
Yeah, and to be going to all those different places, and now to be at an eminent time in her life where she can begin to work at a much greater scale.
Yeah, I mean, the world's her oyster.
Yeah,
really.
Quite literally.
Yeah.
And she don't need no oyster sauce. So just for people to know, Andre was my first producer on Adventures into Reality back in 2013. He was there. We went from just a handful of callers to thousands of callers. So Andre has been familiar with the material, and we were having a private conversation, and I was just talking with him about the hurricanes and the storms, and there was this incredible flow that was coming through and things that had been building in my own life since the eclipse that happened on the 21st of August. Now we're here to the next level where these storms are more than just physical storms that we see in the 3D matrix. Harvey went straight to the center of karmic resolution, the Gulf oil producing areas, Texas, the heart of the infrastructure of the military industrial complex, hundreds of military bases above and below also threatened, as well as the naval forces that are there, the oil industry, natural gas industry that's there, the port industries that are there. This was not weather warfare. I have stated on only a handful of times the majority of weather warfare systems are no longer functioning the way they were in the last 2 years. The system of weather is now at a point, the more electromagnetic frequency they put into it, or HARP or weather altering frequencies, they discover their greater algorithms of weather control completely crumble. So it is a point where they must give energy to the system to create its remedy, resolve, and resolution. These storms are karmic, resolution, and time rift-based concepts. In the center of these storms is a low-pressure system. Shortly, we're going to be exploring the science and the meta-science behind them. But from this point of view, when observing a storm that is a seen and an unseen storm, we are seeing great energies stirred up before the storm's arrival, during the storm, and then after the storm pulls out. During Hurricane Sandy and Katrina, many of the sacred geometry systems were underwater, and the people fled the area, a full-on exodus. And as long as they were underwater and there were no people there for them to haunt, many of these sacred objects and sacred geometry machines, buildings, courthouses, monuments, and etc. lost their abilities to stay grounded, and many of the ghosts and negative entities that were bound to them found their way to go somewhere else because there was nothing for them to feed on in that area. Or the sacred geometry systems themselves fell apart because there wasn't a wizard class left to support them. All of these sacred geometry systems require us and our input, our daily, our cars, our parking, our going and paying of taxes for them to stay bound there. This next hurricane that is coming, Irma, has a variety of potentials when it's coming for the karmic resolution. It is coming for where it's creating the most amount of karmic debt. Hurricane Harvey went straight into the city of Houston. That was where the most karmic debt and resolution was needed. It is fair to say that in our history right now, post-2012, we're in the times of what I'll just call confusion, where people are trying to figure out the difference between what is up and what is down and what is inside and what's out, because we live in an upside-down and inside-out world.
Yeah, one of the video series I've done with you is about the industrial age, and we're at the end of the implementation of that. We're in the technical age, and there is from what I perceive in the reality, there's a necessity for us to be disconnected from things like the earth and the environment and the weather. But what I got from the chat I had with you leading up to this recording was how the weather is actually an enormous ally to us, and there's certain things and aspects which you got into by offering the metaphysical aspects that suggested that there was good things happening relative to this. Do you want to share something on that, Andrew?
So yes, there is, since these are karmic resolution storms, and wherever they go, there's the most amount of karmic resolution. So in Hurricane Irma's example, it is just off the coast of Africa, and more than likely by Wednesday next week, so the 7th to the 6th of November, possibly by the 11th of November, hitting parts of the United States,
September,
Gulf of September. Yes, September.
Yeah.
So between September 5th and the 11th, there is a high potential of it going towards Mexico or the United States. Now, part of my point of view is if they're going to use any continuing full-on control, weather control, to alter something, and it does go south to Mexico, that means the esoteric battle of the surface and the subsurface is still going on, and that, you know, these storms are going to get worse and worse and worse. The more weather control energy they put in, the more negative effects they have 7 to 10-fold in their other areas that are affected, because what is resolving in these storms is also time traveling. And those entities that have been on the surface of the world, disincarnates trapped in the sacred geometry system, or those willingly wanting to be in the sacred geometry system, the subculture of etheric entities that are connected to the sacred geometry systems for tens of thousands or millions of years, those systems will be severely damaged, and they won't be able to stay within those systems, and these storms will essentially, you know, force them to go to their astral worlds and find resolution and no longer be bound to our physical world. And if we could have a 30 to 50% reduction in stored entities within the system, we could see a potential of much better outcomes to certain processes when you'd have that many less predatory feeding entities.
Yeah, what I get from that is basically you're talking about ghosts and demons that occupy certain regions of the earth, and we have a relationship with them.
As well as disincarnate off-worlders, yes. So there are off-worlders that do not need physical bodies. They've reached a level of technology where they can manifest and unmanifest light-based bodies at will.
Yeah. I've actually made a recording that hasn't been public yet with Andrew about hauntings, ghosts, and the sacred geometry infrastructure that support that aspect of our world that we live in. And basically a lot of the courts and these sort of buildings and the criminal element in society is all there just to feed the ghosts and demons and these disincarnated beings that Andrew are talking about. And they're in all our cities. There's cultures with them. You've talked about places like New York that have whole societies related to all this, and they're pretty much everywhere in all the main cities to keep this
worldwide.
Yeah, to keep the frequency of the earth in that region in a sort of manageable way for the system of domination and control. So
right.
What I was going to offer you, Andrew, and I got from that was there's these sort of massive storms have a huge water deluge raining sort of component, and from what I gather with you is that there's an enormous metaphysical benefit from a huge drowning of a region. Is that something
Correct.
You can go on?
Yes, so when you have a flooding of an area, the people must leave. When the people leave, those that are bound to the courthouses, the sacred geometry buildings, parks, memorials, streets that have are interwoven into laws that have, long-reaching effect into soul family, because each and every law does affect a living soul, and part of the esoteric system is to print a soul so the physical laws affect it from lifetime to lifetime, like thus the debt, so on and so forth. When you can't maintain the court system, you can't maintain the post office for long periods of time, like 5-6 weeks, they break down tremendously. And those entities can no longer stay bound in their systems. The systems don't have enough energy to keep a bubble, and their whole little false astral societies, literally, the house of cards come tumbling down, and every night there's far less light energy for them to source on, and they lose energy and are unable to stay phased into our reality, and they simply phase out of the reality and return to their natural astral matrix instead of faking it like they've been doing it for so long. Now, conversely, there is a physical side that supports that, a wizard class. Now, that wizard class, in one of the recordings that I've talked about, they were overtaken by the technological age. The technological age is barely 100 years old. It really wasn't until the 1950s and 60s that most people got color television and transistor radios. And, 30 years later, you had basic internet. And 20 years after that, total 50 years later, we have where we're at right now. So we're talking 50 years. It's only been 50 years, and really only 10 years since high technology has been in, 2/3 of the world. Of the world's major cities.
Yeah.
The wizard class is no longer educated in the same way to support the old infrastructure. Digitality has taken over the main system. But the digital system is still fed by the local courthouses. If you take, I believe there's 500,000 court cases every day across just the United States alone. That's in totality. There's 5,300 counties, and each county can have one courthouse and 10 to 20 judges there. And in some of the big cities, 1,000 judges, 1,500 judges. Plus mayor's court, so on and so forth.
Yeah, you say that the head of the Supreme Court are, and I would say with the judges, now that you've offered that, they're responsible for the dream time of the domination control. That's
correct. They're also what we'll just say the head of the new harvester class.
Yes.
Every court case is supported by the Babylonian money curse. And if you look at American courts, you have an angel with a blindfold called justice. There is no justice or judgment in remedy and resolve. And it is an esoteric symbology of why the scales are weighed against the just and the unjust. Because it isn't a fair system, and that's what it's saying right up front. As soon as you've engaged in the courts, you've already lost the energy battle and the physical battle.
Yes.
That is why whatever is done at the administrative level or the spiritual administrative level. That's why I've come up with the banking and the government revocations. When one understands the perspective and what others' perspectives, projections on you are, as well as the mythos behind it, is where you can deconstruct their mythos by creating your own rules, borders, and spiritual policies that prevent them from entangling and exchanging energy with you. That's the basis of this, why the court system and the judges are at the peak of the esoteric alchemy side. Now, not all judges are wizards, and that is a broad statement, but that high level, at the Scalia level before he died, the Supreme Court and the top federal judges, they are the dark wizards.
Yes.
Are they dark wizards via practitioners? Not always. A handful of them are, and the rest of them at some point have been overtaken by the lure of power and the government and money, and have repeated that lifetime to lifetime to lifetime and become powerful tools to the system itself, contract holders to the great machine that is retaining negative soul frequencies on a surface world.
Yeah.
With all the esoteric practice and ancient history behind it.
Yeah, they've given their sovereignty away to the structure.
Correct.
Yeah, because like you sign laws, you agree to contracts, or you become an employee of something, then essentially you're giving your sovereignty away in certain degrees and stuff like that. So
right.
Yeah, the 1990s video series I've done with Andrew, the first one of that, he gets into basically as a product of the technological era, the escalation of the lawyer class was a byproduct of that. So that's something to keep in mind if you're wanting to do more research.
Where can we find info regarding the original Earth grid compared with the false sacred geometry grids for either local cities or the entire global system? You speak of dirty energy underwear being shared at sacred sites. How shall we move forward dismantling these sacred geometry systems actively? Very, very good question. I want you to think of an object that omnidirectionally creates a field. That's like a router. So as long as you're within a few hundred feet or 100 yards or so of that router, you can get connection. Okay, connection is that dirty energy underwear. So if you have hundreds of objects spread throughout the cities that are irradiating energy, that means in that field you are sharing dirty energy under as the fundamental rules. When you identify where these sacred geometry items are, you realize that there's their layer and then there's the true layer. And you have to go through that AM radio dial to figure out what the true layer is. And once you do, you begin denying access to all of those other energy layers. You go to those places, sacred places, that dirty energy underwear has been shared, and you declare your sovereignty in it, that you do not share those surface reality rules, that you are accessing the fundamental rules of that sacred place and sharing sacred space in that sacred place that isn't sharing dirty energy underwear. And that is the process in which we confront these sacred geometry systems and take them down individually. The next is we can look at this world and know that our signature frequency can change something. There are rituals that you can do on a simple piece of paper with the simple images of your own drawing, and then you put it inside the system of domination control and mail it to somewhere. And the second you put your energy into that system, you can change something very beneficial. You can send letters to sacred places. You could have people deliver rocks to different places and bury them. And once your signature frequency is there, it is your choice as a multidimensional being to have those objects emanate your energy field, to open a sacred space there so that there can be something as an alternate to the alternate system. The next is, how do we find the natural order of Earth? I think one of the most greatest examples is to look at the Great Barrier Reef of Australia. All life is there. You know, the Gulf of Mexico, all life is there. That is where the natural sacred geometry is, where life naturally flows. Look at where the fish migrate to each year, the salmon. They go from the ocean and into the land. That is where your natural sacred geometry systems are. And that is where we should be having our homes, in those places. We're lured into cities that have a sacred geometry, a natural life order underneath them, with massive prayer objects that have been put on top, that have multiple other layers of belief system all around it, omnidirectionally creating this dirty energy underwear field that has everything all mixed into a big soup that's connected to other cities through airports, trains, railroads, cars, lighting, power, and so on and so forth. And that is what we are disconnecting from. What the system gives us to conform with instantly when we want to go out in its version of reality, when in fact we can create a bubble of reality around ourselves and move through this entire world as a photonic light being and never intersect anything else as an energy being. It is our inherent right.
Our next caller is going to be 353. Your name and where you're calling from?
Is that me?
353, that is you. Your name and where you're calling from?
It's Michelle from Ireland.
Michelle from Ireland. How you doing today? What kind of questions do you want to ask?
Oh my God. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you for all your help with everybody for humanity. And my question is where I live at the minute. I'm wondering, is there a womb chakra near where I live? It's west coast of Ireland, Kerry, Ballyferter.
Okay, just one second. There is a womb chakra there, but right now it has got a number of churches that are, let's just say, capping some energy on it, and
Yes.
it'll be a long time before that womb chakra energy opens to a significance, though you can
Right.
still work with it. What you have to do is identify the main churches that are blocking its energy and go and do some form of anti-sacred geometry ritual there, which is very, very simple. It would involve some of your urine, some sage, and some lemons, all combined into one little drink squeezed up, and you just walk by there and say, I am now using the sacred geometry energy to connect to the womb chakra. Anything that's programmed directly above it is related with this false sacred geometry grid that is infested with light energy, is now separate of your actions. And you will have to regularly upkeep that if you're intending to begin to do ritual work with the womb chakra.
Okay. Because I make organize, and I have been placing it around different sacred places like holy wells.
That's wonderful. What kind of organite are you making?
I just have a workshop in my shed. I'm making it with fiberglass resin, but I have made some with the beeswax as well.
And what have you noticed the difference between the beeswax and the fiberglass?
Oh, it's a huge difference. And I'm trying to source some beeswax locally because it's such a beautiful thing to have it in beeswax compared to the plastics.
Yes,
But,
it is a total living entity.
yes.
So what I can suggest for you to do is find something that's in the candle size where you can make something in candle tubes, and then you can make the beeswax ones that are stacked. That can be a little bit more effective if you're going to be doing sacred geometry works. Instead of making bricks that have lots and tons of crystals which drive the price up, you can have more filler in there, which is plant material.
Okay.
So it's like a fat candle, and so you can put more material in it and less wax. And then you can layer sage, light levels of crystal, and all sorts of other things, and those will act as energy batteries as well as energy filters.
Yes. Well, I'm lucky that quartz crystal actually washes up on the beach here, and so does red jasper.
Beautiful. Oh, it's even better. You got that ocean energy mixing with that beeswax energy. Gorgeous.
Sourcing it locally. The reason I asked about that question is because I heard Star Wars were coming here next year to film, and they have been on Skellig Michael doing filming last year, and I just wondered, was there a reason? I mean, I know it's an energy point where they're going Shabelle Head, it's called.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering about helping to clear the land after they've been there, being the master magicians that they are. They're surely pulling on the energy there.
Yes, but you must understand they're making a broadcast through time.
just like in the last caller was talking about the different show frequencies, what you're seeing is something that's bringing an entire event there. And that event is connected to many other filming locations. So if you're going to attempt to, let's say, just remove those energies, you have to realize it's not your place to do that.
Okay.
Second part is the place that is the person's place that is to do that would be the guide beings. And if you are going to take any type of sacred objects there, it is no intention of changing that area, but assisting it with energy so it can do it on its own. That place did volunteer to have those people there and all the esoteric concepts that come with it, as well as the belief of every person that's going to see the movie and for every person that's ever seen or read a Star Wars movie or book.
Right. Okay. I understand.
So that land is blessed with the energies of the now, which comes with everyone's daily problems.
Yes. Okay. Perfect.
So here's one from guest 5318. This is a good one. Why is that those who are not on a spiritual journey / unaware of topics that we're discussing here seem to be completely unaffected by the shifts? It seems like it's business as usual. I don't get it. They created that life of illusion. They said, fuck it, I'm giving up to the system. I'm going to be rich. I'm going to be unaware. I'm going to be a consumer. I'm going to get that car. I'm going to get my motorcycle. I'm going to get this, whatever it is. The materialism and consumerism has taken them over. Or something else. I want to be a writer, and all I want to do is write about the topics of this world. A musician. I want to be the next music person. They're stuck in that cyclical dragon that's beyond what we're in. Now, the people that are in those worlds are aware of our world, okay? Don't think that they're not. They are. They're ignoring it. In their unseen world, there is chaos and cataclysm going on. But they're putting up the two middle fingers and saying, I'm not listening to the unseen world. I'm not listening. And they're going off in their bubble until their bubble collapses and they need a healer or they have a spiritual awakening. Unfortunately, they chose that life. And fortunate for them. You and everyone else in this room has also had lifetimes where we're saying, fuck it, I'm having a good life. I'm going to go in, have the 2 kids, the car, the this, the that. I'm going to die when I'm 76.
Each different bubble of reality is true.
A galactic historian is a person that looks at all the lines of dramatic karma.
Nudge, nudge, it's the Holy Grail. Improvise. Mysterious. It's counter psychic intelligence.
Why is DNA farming of this star cluster so important?
Because we do manifest our reality. We do create our reality.
Hello, let's create, let's co-create, and let's change this world with love. No matter if you're from Alpha Centauri or Earth, we all began with the same birthing process. We live in a limited point of view. Living the mystical life daily is about striving for the unlimited point of view. Each day, each human being gets an infinite amount of choices. The level of awareness that you are working at means you have a responsibility to be equal with it. How does one truly let go of expectation? You could make the moment that you wake up to the moment you go to sleep sacred. The keys to success: choice, 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 and choice.